Hey guys, today I'm going to show you what it's like to change the shell on a Phantom 3. It doesn't matter whether it's a standard, professional, or advanced, it's all kind of the same way. What happened was I took my drone out of the case and I was putting propellers on it, and I noticed that there was some like cracking going on between the mount on this motor here. And I don't know how that happened because I haven't crashed it since my second time flying last year, and when it crashed it didn't really do much. It just kind of like scratched up the top here. Well, that's not true, it actually did a lot. It bent the gimbal, and I fixed the gimbal by re-straightening it out, and it's been running fine. The gimbal, the camera never had any issues, but the body itself never endured any cracks or anything, just a little bit of scuffing here. But this crack, I was reading on forums, apparently in the first generation of Phantom 3s, this part of the chassis wasn't strong enough between the mounting points, so it starts to micro fracture and then it just cracks. So that's what I'm dealing with. I fixed it myself with some epoxy, and I've flown it a couple times and it's been fine, but I don't really trust it over top of important things like people. So I want to make sure that it's proper. So I got this new shell, and apparently the new shell has been redesigned, or at least from what I read in the forums, that it's a little bit stronger between the points. And you can kind of see that they've added a little bit of cross members there. I'm not sure if this one's the exact same or not, because when I fixed it, all I did was take the motor out of it, kind of pull it back and lay some epoxy in there, and then I went over the back half with epoxy as well, and then I put all the screws back in. I've been watching some YouTube videos on how to do this, and I would say that it's probably like an 8 or 9 out of 10 for difficulty. You're gonna need a few different screwdrivers, T8 Torx, T6 Torx, and you also need a soldering iron to get off some of the contacts. If you don't fix this thing properly and it's in the air and it falls apart, there could be some serious damages. Whiteboard here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw little circles and write where those screws came from, and keep the screws in that little area, because there's so many different kind of screws on this, and like so much stuff is going on, I'll probably forget where they came from. DJI sends us some new screws. Comes with landing gear when you buy the shell kit, but we have to get the sensors out of it and the compass out of the old ones before we do that. So I'm going to first take off the camera, I think, and then go from there. All right, so the first thing we need to do is get these drop pins out of here. They're like a safety pin. But if you bought your Phantom, it would have came with pins like this, but I've already used the second ones because I had to fix the gimbal, right? I had it off already, so I don't have extra pins. I might be able to reuse these, but if not, I'll have to get some new ones or put some kind of like a zip tie through it or something. It just has to be kind of loose so that this can't fall out. So what I've watched other people do is just kind of push these down, and it kind of spreads them open. Okay, so now that I got the safety drop pins out, we just need to squeeze these little rubber gimbal mounts. I don't really know what they're called, but you just need to pull these out gently, because there's a connector on this back side here. There's two connectors actually on the bottom here. I'll zoom in so you can get a better look at it. Okay, so there's two connectors under here. The first one here, you need to pinch it and pull it out. Just pop the clip and then this will pull out. And then you have one more on the back here, and that's connected to the sensor. So you can just unplug that straight out. It also has a clip on the back. Okay, so now we got the camera off. We're gonna remove these screws here that hold the mount on, and they are a T8 Torx. Just move it gently so you don't break this cable here. Next, I want to remove the sensor, the sonar, and I think it's a T6 Torx. connector in the back corner here you want to be careful with, but you can disconnect that. and the sonar sensor can come off. Okay, so before I go and remove this board here, there's gonna be some wires that come through here, so I have to take the top off and all the board out of it before I can remove it. So I'm just gonna leave it like this for now and make sure that these wires are still good. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the whole entire top half of the case. And in order to do that, we need to remove these 3 screws around the motor on each side. And we also need to cut the stickers that are on here that are going across both sides of the body. So I'm just gonna cut those with the knife here. And then there's some clips that hold the top half of the shell on, and we can get those off and then we can see the circuit board. So the outer ones take a T6 and the inner ones take a T8 Torx. And there's actually 4 more screws right here and here, and I think that's it. Okay, so now that all those screws are out of it, you can flip this over and we should be able to pry on the clips that hold the top shell on. You just have to pinch on it, and you might need to get a screwdriver to pry up on it. So I finally got one side pried up here, and there's 3 clips. They're further in the body, so there's one here, one kind of in the middle, and then another one back here. And you have to actually push in and kind of pry up. And obviously I've kind of chewed up the body now, but it was hard for me to find where they were, but I got the one side off now, and I'm gonna work on the other side in the same way. And there it is, we got the cover off, all the clips, and we gotta be careful. There's one wire under here that goes to the GPS in the top. Just unplug that, and there you go. After looking this over, there's wires going down through to the legs. So I'm thinking I might take the legs off now and get these sensors out of them. And then I can take all these motors out and the circuit board out in one go. So I think that's what I'm gonna do first, is take the legs off. Okay, so to take the landing gear off, it's a T8 Torx. And as you can see, there's kind of this rubber plug here. You just need to pop that out like that. Now this side right here has the compass in here, and you need to take that out with these small Phillips screws right here. Once you get the cover off the compass, you can see it's really glued in here with some kind of silicone type stuff. So I'm gonna have to be careful to cut this out of here. So all you need to do is pry up on these little tabs here, and you'll be able to slide this back piece off. But you just kind of pry up on each side until you get it, and then it'll just pop out. There we go. First one popped out. So you continue that for the next 4, and you're good to go. Taking this compass out is going to be really tricky. I don't want to cut anything. So I just took my knife and I slowly cut the compass out of the silicone glue area in here, and you just got to be really careful with that. And I'll have to glue it back in to the new leg or landing gear, or I could reuse this, I guess, but I've kind of chewed it up now when I was trying to get out these other sensors. So we'll just slip that through. And now we can flip the drone over. Be careful with all these connectors and wires. And we can see where all these wires come through here on the body. We'll worry about taking those out after we get the circuit board out. So we have 4 screws here to remove on the top circuit board and a bunch of connectors to disconnect. And then we need to remove the motors. Maybe I'll remove the motors now. That way I can just move them out of the way. So there's 4 T8 torque screws on each motor, and we'll just start taking those out now. And they'll be a little tight because they have Loctite on them. Okay, so now I have all the motors unscrewed. Just gotta carefully flip this over. And we need to remove these 4 screws here with a Phillips screwdriver. Now we need to just disconnect all the connectors around the outside of the remaining circuit board here. And I'll start with these ones here. They all have kind of a push clip tab on them. And this looks like it's part of the compass. And this one here is part of the gimbal and it's all glued down, so I have a feeling I don't want you to take that off. So I'll leave that. The smaller one here. And I think that's it. This should come out of here now. Now notice on the LEDs here, they also have wires that connect to the circuit board, and they are melted in here with plastic. And I saw some people just break them off, but I've also saw people use a soldering iron and just melt them off, and I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna take the soldering iron and melt over top of these little plastics here. And should be able to pop it up. So there's one side up. And there it is, it just comes off just like that. So you do that to the other 3, and that's it. So now I have everything disconnected, all the LEDs, the motors, all the connections around the circuit board. I should be able to slowly pop this off. Okay, so there's a couple more screws holding on the power connector where the battery goes in, and they are Phillips screws. And that just pulls out like that. There's 2 more small screws down in here that are holding on the USB port. So that's just the USB port. Now there's 4 more Phillips screws down here, and this holds on this kind of like battery tray. So we need to take those out. That just lifts out like that. Now that the circuit board and motors are out of the way, we need to get the sonar thing off. And it is a Phillips screwdriver. There's 4 screws on each side. So the next thing we need to do is take the top shield and get the GPS out of it. And it's kind of glued in with this like rubbery stuff. So we need to slowly peel that out of there and replace it and put it into the top of the new shell. It looks like there's 4 screws holding it in. And this will be the first thing that I replace onto the new shell. Take the old shell out of here and put the new one in. And once all the screws in there, just kind of push this back in. If you take a look at the new casing that they have, you can see these cross braces that go through and through the middle as well. See how they're missing on this side? So DJI has fixed the problem. They obviously know that it cracks in here from the motor torque, and they've beefed it up a bit. So it's good to know that they've done that, but it also kind of sucks because they realize that they have a problem on this one. And I'm not sure if they started shipping them out like this, but if you have this issue here, the new shell is obviously new and improved. So I tried to match up the new screws with the old screws, as you can see on my little whiteboard there. And there's a few that are missing. They didn't give me any screws for the motors, and there's a couple other ones missing, but it's okay, I can reuse them. It's not that big of a deal. So I actually noticed in a couple spots here, I punctured the shielding on the wire. On this looks like the gimbal wires. And the wires didn't break, just the shielding chewed off of them. So I kind of separated them here. And what I'm gonna do, I thought about putting some kind of like glue over them or something like that, but I want to get this back together tonight, so I don't want to have to wait for that to dry. So I got some heat shrink, and what I might do is just kind of slide a little piece on here, cut a little slot in the heat shrink and slide it on here and just melt it onto there so that it shields so these don't touch. But yeah, what you need to do is you really need to make sure that when you're taking that cover off, the top part of the shell, that you are really careful around the edges, because my screwdriver went through and hit this. So it's something you need to keep an eye on. I should probably say that at the start of the video and not at this part, but I just want to show you what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to put the 4 screws back in this sonar. I routed all the sensors back through. So now I'm going to reattach the front USB port. Now you can put the battery tray back in. Now I can flip this back around. Just kind of pushing the LEDs back into position. I'll have to probably remelt the tops of the little white pegs that's on it to make them stay. One thing we need to remember too is the compass wire that came out of the one leg. We need to make sure we run that up through here and up around to this side here. Otherwise, it's going to be tough to do after the fact. So I'll run this compass wire up to here. As long as the wires aren't pinching, you can screw these last screws in here to hold the circuit board down. And they are the Phillips screws that have this kind of like a rubber washer on them. And once that's tight, you can go ahead and start plugging all these wires back in because we're done. It's basically all the wires that need to be plugged back in, except for obviously the GPS in the top shell, which plugs in here. And I think that's it. I'm going to melt all the LEDs in to place, just like how I took the other ones out by putting the soldering iron over top of it. So now I'm gonna screw in the 4 motors, and for whatever reason they didn't give me screws for the motors, so I have to reuse the old screws. So I might as well start with the compass leg. And they gave us these new rubber grommets, so I'm going to use these instead of the old ones. So I push the compass back into that silicone. And I'm just going to put this sensor on over top. Be careful I don't pinch off the compass wire when I slide this on over top. I think it's okay. I think it's okay there. Just need to glue it back in. And I'll slide the other sensor on. And that's it. So I got some stuff here just called goop. And I'm gonna put some of that on here to hold. Don't really know how much I need, but hopefully that's enough. I don't want it shifting around in there. Should hold. All right, now I'm gonna do the other leg. I'm using the old legs because for whatever reason the new kit didn't come with these foot pads and I thought it was going to. And I don't feel like pulling these off because they're kind of glued on here. So I'm just going to reuse the old legs because there's nothing wrong with them. And there's no point in changing them up because it's not like there's a new design that makes them stronger like the rest of the shell. So I'm just going to reuse these old ones and put them on now. So now I'm going to put these new rubber grommets in here. Now we need to use the larger grommet for this one because we got more wires. And that's it, the landing gear is back on. So now we can install the top shell. There's the GPS wire here that needs to plug in. And that needs to go in first. They're really close to the one clip here. It may make it hard to clip down if I don't have it out of the way. Alright, I got that out of the way pretty good. Okay, every wire looks like it's out of the way well. I think I have everything reconnected. I better make sure before I hook this back up because it's really tough to get back off. Alright, I think everything looks good. Guess I'll just snap it back up. You can put our screws back in, 3 around each motor and then the 4 in the middle. Now they did give new screws for reattaching the shell. Take the T6 Torx and do the smaller screws on the outside edge. And then finally the T8 Torx, but this screw has kind of like a sharp thread on it. It's a little different than the others. Now one thing I'd probably recommend is maybe doing this before putting the legs on if your screwdriver is not long enough, because it's making this a lot harder to screw in with these legs in the way. Okay, so I have the legs on and all of the screws in now tight, holding the top shroud on. And now I just need to put the sonar back on. So one plug right here. Plugged in. That was held on by T6 Torx. Alright, so now we need to attach the bottom gimbal bracket, and it can only go on one way. It has the shorter stance of screws on the front and then the wider one at the back. And you need to take this wire here and run it in the channel and then through this little port here, just like that. Now you need to be careful because this wire is now under here. It has to be in that channel perfectly. So you just need to make sure you tuck it in there without it getting pinched off. Then you take your T8 Torx and put the screws back in. Alright, now it's time to put the camera on. So the first thing we'll do is we'll reconnect the sonar that goes to the back. And then connect the gimbal wire back up. Then you just need to squeeze these rubber dampening pads and push them back through. And then once those are in there, we just have to put the drop pins back in. And if you're using new ones, it's probably better than reusing the old ones. I'm just going to reuse the old ones. So I think the goop is set here now, and this compass is holding well, and I'm going to put this cover on And once the cover's on, that's basically it. Everything's hooked up and we can give it a test. Well, we'll turn this bad boy on and see if it runs. Everything looks okay. Aircraft connected. Aircraft warming up. We got a picture. Gimbal's working. We can calibrate the gimbal. I think it's okay. I'm gonna take it out and take it out for a test run, and we'll see if it flies, because I don't know. We need to give it a test. So yeah, let's take it up and see what happens. So as you can see, the shell's fixed and the drone's flying awesome. So thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, thumbs up. If you disliked it, thumbs down twice, and I'll see you in the next one.